Managing anorexia with a carnivore diet. I think more people are going to be able to relate to this video than they might have realized. Hey, what's shaking bacon? I hope you're doing well. Today's video is going to be an interview with me and my friend Claire. Claire has been dealing with anorexia for quite a while. She talks about how the carnivore diet has helped balance her eating disorder. It's really interesting because lots of people come to carnivore from an overabundance of weight. We are overweight to begin with and we want to lose weight. Some people come at it from a health perspective just to fix their autoimmune disorders and they've never battled with obesity or any weight issues. Some people come to carnivore just to improve their overall performance, but a lot of people come to carnivore to manage their obesity. And it's interesting because obesity and anorexia are two opposite sides of the same coin. I think a lot of people are going to listen to this interview and realize I have a lot of the same problems just from the opposite end. I think it's going to resonate with a lot of people and they're going to relate to this. This is the first half of the interview. The interview is about an hour long, so I've divided it up into two parts because I don't want it to be too much all at once for people. So I'm going to be playing part B of the interview either in my next video or the one after that. They don't have to be back to back, but I've really enjoyed doing this interview. It's a real inside view for people who have an eating disorder, or more importantly, if you have someone in your life that deals with anorexia. So many of us know somebody in our circle who is battling an eating disorder like anorexia. We all know people who are battling eating disorders. It often happens more commonly with women and more commonly with teenagers. And it's a condition that can last years for some people and it can kill them. So in this video, we're going to discuss ways to recognize it in other people, and we're going to discuss ways to deal with it and ways that have helped Claire through this. So I hope you really enjoy this video. Hey, Claire, how are you?
Good, and you?
Good. How's the weather in France today?
Very sunny and very hot, almost 100 Fahrenheit.
You went for a walk this morning. Where did you go?
I went to my open market and to see my local farmer and to buy so much butter for my week.
How much
I'm
butter?
going every single Sunday there to buy for a week.
And how much butter do you buy for the week?
I'm always having different kind of butter in my fridge. But for the raw butter from the local farmer, I'm eating between 1.5 and 2 pounds a week. And then I'm having other kind of butter. Other raw butter, but from the grocery store, some pasteurized butter, because I love to switch from one to another one.
Yeah. Have you tried brown butter yet?
Oh, yeah. But I'm cooking it the French way, and many Americans are not happy with it because it's more difficult than the American way.
Yeah,
but
there's
it's
more
healthier.
I see. Okay. I'm going to have to learn that from you sometime because there's more steps typically in French cooking, but it's usually worthwhile, right? It usually pays off.
Yeah, the thing is that you don't burn, you don't eat the burnt milk protein. And so you have to filter it, and it's much better.
So is it just a richer flavor when you do this because you're reducing it?
Yeah, the flavor is stronger, and then you don't have any grains on it. So it's even better.
I'm really interested in learning more about your experience with anorexia. You've battled anorexia for quite a while. How long have you been battling it for?
I've been sick with anorexia for almost 30 years. But I really decided to fight against the sickness when I was 33 years old, so 6 years ago.
Tell us a bit about yourself before we get into the details of anorexia. You have a few degrees. Tell us about this.
So basically, I'm a geologist. I studied geology and I got one master degree about it. Then I went to the UK and I got one master degree on petroleum engineering. It's linked to geology and geoscience, and it's mainly focused on fluid mechanics. And then I started working, and while working, I wanted to learn something else, and I learned law and intellectual property, and I got one master degree on intellectual property.
Wow. So you're basically recession proof as far as careers go.
Yeah. I've always been in love with learning stuff. So I want to educate myself all the time. And I love studying, researching, learning more about. And when there is one topic that I love, I just want to go really deep inside.
So that's interesting because when it comes to the carnivore diet, you had to unlearn everything you've learned when it comes to nutrition.
Oh,
So
yeah.
yeah, so let's start with before we get into the details of that, could you give us a definition of anorexia?
For me, anorexia is all about controlling everything. So when I was sick, I was controlling my food intakes. Okay, I was controlling the calories, I was controlling the volume, I was controlling everything related to food, but then I was as well controlling my activity level, my calories expenditure. I was controlling my time. So I was controlling my schedule and I couldn't move like 5 minutes late was not possible for me. It was like everything really in good place. I was controlling my environment. Everything has to be placed at one specific position. It was all about controlling.
Yeah. And there's obviously triggers that bring this on, but would you say it's from a lack of control in other areas of your life that you start to focus and get hyper vigilant about the things you can control?
Yeah. I have a really painful history and a lot of crappy stuff happened to me, and I was not into control for this stuff, and I was not responsible of them. And then, yeah, to feel more secure, I needed to find back a control of something, and like, and mainly controlling the food was for me controlling my life. But I was mistaken anyway. But yeah.
Yep. So would you say part of the healing process of anorexia was coming to terms with the problems that stemmed from the difficulties you went through?
I had to heal from my difficulties, but I have to be honest, some of them I'm not healed yet, but I could battle the anorexia without being totally healed. But being healed from anorexia helped me a lot with mental clarity. And so it's helping me now to end the process of healing from my traumas.
Yeah. And carnivore was a big part of this healing for you, wasn't it?
It has been the major part of my healing. Okay, I was really, really sick when I was between 25 years old and 33 years old, really, really deeply sick. And then when I was 33 years old, I got a flu and it became really bad. And I got the pneumonia back. And then my heart stopped beating for 6 minutes and I almost died. Finally, they put me back on life. At this time, I say, okay, I was thinking I was controlling the moment I would have died. And I realized I was not controlling it and I could have died even if I didn't choose it. I became really scared about dying. And I said, okay, you don't want to die now, so you have to battle the anorexia. I start my fight, but I didn't want to die, but I didn't really want to leave. I was like in a surviving mode.
Yes.
Healthy enough not to have my life in danger, but sick enough to have an identity.
You were coasting.
Yeah. I stayed at this position for long, so I accepted to gain enough weight to be healthy, still not enough to be able to work, to be able to do fun stuff, yeah. So I was still counting every single calorie entering my mouth. When I was deeply sick, I was dealing with no food at all, like 100 calories a day. That's it. So it's really low. But then when I wanted to survive, I was dealing with 1,500 calories a day as a minimum.
Wow.
Never more than 1,800.
Yes.
And I was really dealing with it, and I was like starving the whole day and allowing myself to eat at the evening, like a reward, you know. You've been starving really strongly, you're good. You deserve your food now.
Right.
So yeah.
So
And this changed only with carnivore.
what was your lowest weight and how tall are you? Just so people can put this into perspective.
Okay, I'm almost 5.8 feet, and my lowest weight was below 70 pounds, so 69 pounds.
So it's definitely pretty severe. So, um,
Oh, yes, pretty severe, yes.
yeah.
I
So,
think my BMI was was less than 10.
wow. Can we go into a little bit more of the details of when your anorexia was at its worst? So your
Yeah.
weight was extremely low. Tell us a little bit more.
At my lowest weight, I was in the wheelchair. I almost couldn't move my legs. It was, yeah, really difficult just to stand up. I could, but I couldn't walk more than 5 meters. I didn't have any muscle on my legs. I didn't have any muscle anywhere in my body. Even my bladder was not having any muscle anymore. So I was peeing on myself.
Mhm.
This is terrible, you know? You're 30 years old and you're wearing stuff like the babies or the elderly. And yeah, you cannot do anything.
Yeah. It's funny
And
what we put ourselves through with
yeah,
some of these ways of with these eating disorders that even when things get really serious for us physically, we still persevere for one reason or another. We're still persevering with it. Well, maybe we are trying to get it under control at that time, but we're still stuck in the cycle from one degree to another.
yeah.
And you eventually broke that cycle.
And you don't realize how bad you are, you know? It's
That's right.
like my brain was not fit at all. So even if I was feeling the crappiest ever, I was still thinking like, you're doing great.
Right.
And at my lowest point, I became blind because you need to have a little bit of fat on your optical nerves.
Yes.
And I lost this one. So I couldn't see anymore. And it lasts for a month.
A month. I was just going to ask how long. Wow. If you don't mind getting into a little bit about calorie counting. Calorie counting is something I think it's extremely common with people who deal with anorexia. They try and manage their food through calories. They don't bother eyeing their food like, okay, that's going to be 4 ounces. Everything's measured, everything's calculated. Would you say calorie counting for someone with an eating disorder can prove to be more harmful than beneficial?
Oh, yeah. I was counting every single calories. So even I was feeding me with non-caloric food or drinks, and mostly with diet soda.
Right.
And I don't know if you're aware about it, but in 100 milliliters of Diet Coke, you have 0.25 cal. And because I was drinking 6 liters a day of Diet Coke, I was counting every single 0.25 calories entering on my body. I was as well counting the calories from the sugar-free gums I was eating. Basically, I was buying sugar-free syrup and add some vegetable jelly on it and just feeding myself with this to have the feelings to be full, but without eating any calories.
Yes.
And when I started eating more calories, it was the same. I was eating a lot of lettuce, a lot of greens, like huge volume, and counting every single calories. And if I decided that I wanted to eat 200 calories for my meal, I will count every single stuff to be able to reach the 200 calories not 199, not 201.
So when they were trying to re-educate you about healthy ways of eating, were they trying to work with you with calorie counting, or were they using different ways of monitoring and measuring different healthy ways, what's considered healthy ways of eating?
Okay, I've been hospitalized a couple of times, and most of the time, the most important was for me to gain back some weight, and they were feeding me with the standard American diet. We can see that even if it's in France. It was with junk food like cookies for breakfast, cookies for snacks, lots of grains and vegetables, and fish or meat for lunch and dinner, bread.
Limited fat.
Limited fat, because they knew that I was scared of fat, so they didn't want me to be struggling too much with it. So really limited fat, and yeah, even low fat yogurt, stuff like this, to have the protein but not the fat.
Yeah.
And lots of whole grain, like the healthy food, the whole rice, bread, but not the real bread, the one with whole flour and things like this.
It's a shame. The North American standard way of eating, based on the food guide, is so misleading and so damaging. It's not even developed, and this is pretty well known in the carnivore circles, but it's not developed by the Department of Health. It's developed by the Department of Agriculture. So it's had has had no science behind it. It's had lobbyists behind it promoting these foods and how much we should be eating. And Dr. Ansel Keys is probably single-handedly responsible for as many deaths as the world wars, for the amount of conditioning he incorporated into the medical community, convincing people saturated fat is bad. Fat in general is bad.
Yeah, and when you're really malnourished, they want to refeed you, and you have a refeeding symptom that can kill you. And they're really afraid about this. And you have to increase your calorie little by little, not to die from the refeeding symptom.
Yes.
What I've learned later on, you cannot have refeeding symptom if you're eating only meat and fat.
Where did you learn that? Just through your own experience, or did you do more research and delve into that?
I learned from my own experience, and then because it happened to me, I wanted to understand why.
Yeah.
And it's only the carbs that can lead to this, because of the fluids in your body and the problem with the electrolytes. That's why when after the Second World War, they opened the camps and they fed all the unnourished people with lots of bread and potato, they died. If they had been fed with meat and butter, they wouldn't have died.
There was virtually no nutritional science back then. That's actually why Dr. Ansel Keys was able to argue his theory, which was not only never proven, but has since been disproven many times over, about fat being bad for you, especially saturated fat, and it's linked to heart health, because he had pretty much the largest study at the time, which was just a big questionnaire of, I forget how many thousands of people. It was just an epidemiology study. It's designed to develop hypotheses from. They're not designed to draw conclusions from, but he drew his own conclusions and pushed that on everybody. His argument was often, whenever anyone disagreed with him, was, well, what science do you have to back up your theory telling me I'm wrong? I have this. I've questioned 10,000 people over a period of 10 or 20 years. What do you have? And no scientist could back up anything, because there was virtually no nutritional science done back then. And the ripple effects have lasted generations.
It's still on today.
Yeah, that's right.
How bad.
So are there any other rabbit holes you can go down when you're learning about, when you're starting to deal with anorexia? Everyone knows about the calorie counting and often the excessive exercise that goes along with it, and often steady state cardio, which destroys the metabolism in the long run. Because if it's done for too long of a period of time, it's actually eating into your lean mass as fuel. Are there any other rabbit holes that people with anorexia go down that maybe other people aren't too aware of?
I think big part of eating disorder is caused by comparisons. And people with eating disorder will compare themselves with what the other people with eating disorder are doing.
So if you're in a group clinic or a meeting, so to speak,
yeah,
while the information's coming at you through your ears, you're too busy looking at other people with your eyes.
Yeah.
And comparing yourself to their story.
Comparing physically what they're doing and what they are saying they are doing. And when I was hospitalized, we were not allowed to meet other anorexic without the supervision of a psychiatrist. And it was only for 1 hour a week, because but we were cheating about this, we're trying to speak together just to know how much they were feeding us, if it was the same, for how long they have been sick, and how much weight they gain. Yeah, the problem, the calories is a problem, but the weight and the number on the scale is such a big problem as well.
So that's interesting. In that situation, being in groups is not helpful, but isolation is more damaging, probably, or as damaging than being around other people that have the same problem, right? So anorexia is often a disorder of isolation. Right?
Yeah, I was totally alone, and I was like a prisoner in my own house. I was not seeing my friends anymore. I didn't want to see my family anymore, because I didn't see them very often, and I didn't want them to notice that I was losing so much weight, because I was conscious of this weight dropping. And even if for a lot of people, they don't see themselves very skinny, I was seeing my bones, and I was seeing them. I had dysmorphophobia, but not that high. I knew I was really skinny, and I was ashamed of being that skinny, and I was hiding below tons of clothes, really large clothes.
Layers, probably.
Layers, a lot of layers. It's really easy to put on lots of layers on the top, but on the legs, it's much harder. But sometimes I was wearing 4, 5, 6 layers just to hide. And I think you need to be with other people, but you don't need to be with community of sick people.
That's right. It's almost like people, it's a weird analogy, but when prisoners go to prison to get reformed, they just learn more bad habits from the other inmates. They just learn how to be better criminals while they're in jail.
And so many tricks of how to starve yourself better, more efficient way.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Could you explain some of the signals people can look for in loved ones who are battling anorexia or bulimia, even for that matter? I'm sure there's lots of similar things to keep an eye out for. Different things people can watch out for in their loved ones who are dealing with this problem that they can't hear from them, but they can start looking for visually, and different habits they could watch for.
When you have a doubt about someone, you're thinking that maybe your daughter, your son has an eating disorder like anorexia. What you have to look for is, okay, first, if you have the doubt, you have to eat with them all the time, to share the meal all the time, and to look at how they handle the meal. If they are cutting like the smallest pieces of food, to eat really slowly and waiting for the dishes to disappear from the table. This way they cut it really small pieces and just ate a little bit, and it took so long to eat a little bit. Then you can see the amount of food that has been eaten. Most of the time, it will be a really settled schedule. So try to have a big meal on the morning one day and another day to have a big meal on the evening and see how they react, because they don't want to go out of schedule. So if there are some people are great eating a lot in the morning because they are thinking, okay, I can eat in the morning because then I will expend a lot of calories during my day. I can control what I've eaten and I will control what I will expend. And some others, like I did, I was like, starve yourself and then expend a lot of calories, depending on how many calories you expend during your day. Just eat enough on the evening to balance. There are the two sides, but yeah, if you're trying to switch from one to another side, the sick people will never accept it.
So is there any other habits, like you mentioned, hiding under layers of clothes, more privacy, the way they,
Drinking tons of liquid,
yeah,
drinking a lot. I have people who reach out to me with kids being sick and they ask their kids to weigh themselves. And the kids were going to the bathroom and drink like crazy before weighing themselves,
right.
just to increase the number on the scale.
I've never heard of that. That makes sense that someone would do that in that situation. Yeah.
Yeah. For me, I was wearing lots of clothes when I was in the hospital, and then always wait with my keys on my pocket, my mobile on my pocket, just trying to add some weight for one way. Even
Yeah.
taking my cutlery, my fork, my knife, everything with me,
Yeah.
just try to eat more.
Lots of people watching this either have a loved one who has anorexia or they know someone in their circle of friends who has anorexia. But most people who might be watching this might have a problem with food, that relationship with food from the other end, where, like myself, where it was overeating. And whenever I went to go weigh in with any doctors, or whenever I wanted to weigh in for any sort of a test or schedule with a medical professional, I would take a laxative beforehand so I could be that extra little bit lighter, right? And so it's and you and I have spoken about this before. It's two different sides of an eating disorder that are just two opposite ends of the spectrum, but we're dealing with the same unhealthy relationship with food.
Yeah.
Yeah, just in totally different ways.
Yeah. It's the opposite, but then the pain is the same.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Being underweight or overweight is the same. You look at one girl that is 80 pounds and she's eating, okay, I would say lettuce or a salad. And you look at her and say, she's that skinny just because she's eating so much, she's restricting so much. And you're judging her. You
That's right.
look at one guy who is 300 pounds and he's eating 3 French fries, and you're just thinking, that's why.
Yeah.
Stop eating French fries. That's fine.
That's right. Absolutely. It's funny. Both are not socially acceptable.
Yeah.
And one of them is so common that we don't think twice about it. And the weird thing is, so everyone can see an unhealthy relationship with food with that person who's underweight and the person who's overweight. And it's interesting how a carnivore diet helped center and balance these ways of eating for both of us. I binged all the time. I was addicted to the feeling of being full. So when I ate, every meal might as well have been my last meal. I ate till I couldn't eat anymore. I was binging. I was used to having a distended stomach. I was doing it in private sometimes. I didn't have ice cream. I would have a meal of ice cream. I would do all these things. I was having large meals, and you start getting into intermittent fasting, and I started getting unhealthy relationships with food doing intermittent fasting as well, because I felt so good when I was fasting. I didn't want to go back to eating. And I was in my early 40s, and I thought, well, that's not good. That's not a good road to go down. Unfortunately, I recognized that early on because I was going back to too many calories all at once, breaking a fast. And so even though I was doing a carnivore diet at the time, it was creating such an insulin spike. My body was getting inflamed, and it felt like I wasn't even doing carnivore at that point, because the beauty of carnivore is you feel so good physically and your inflammation goes away. And so fasting made me feel even better, but then my refeeding window made me feel worse than I did originally. So I thought I got to stop this. And I didn't lose a pound in the months I was doing intermittent fasting. I didn't lose a pound. So, and I
I'm
wasn't
really sure that we don't have to fast when we have a past of eating disorder, and doesn't matter which kind of eating
I agree.
disorder it is.
Absolutely. We have to fuel our bodies.
Yeah.
I've been a big believer in that with carnivore. And I also used that as a learning experience to confirm with me. I was like, no, that's not good. Zeroing in on health is famous for that. They say, eat like you're a lion, because they want you to refuel your body. Your body often has a damaged metabolism by the time most people come to this way of eating, from yo-yo dieting or just being heavier, lighter on the scale, up and down all through the years. And it causes damage. And sometimes it takes a long time to fix the hormones and the damage to the body before we can get to that place of
It takes ages. I think we need really to spread the word that we have been damaging our body for years and years and years, and we cannot expect everything to be fixed within a couple of months.
That's right. That's
it
right.
takes time.
That's powerful. And it's so true. People need to keep that in mind when they hit plateaus and when it takes a long time to lose weight or put on weight. It takes time. Because you were saying before, you're still working towards putting on more weight. So that concludes part A of this interview. I hope you really enjoyed it. For those of you who want to join in on the 80-20 challenge, the Facebook group link is below the video. It's an 80% fat, 20% protein, 4 meals a day, and there's a way to calculate your fat and protein, and it's designed to help people get off of their stubborn weight plateaus. Some people have found they've been doing strict carnivore for a long time, and they've noticed they've been on a plateau. Maybe they have their last 20 pounds to lose. Maybe they have their last 100 pounds to lose. The thing is, you're still getting too much of an insulin response from your 1 or 2 meals a day, because lots of people fall into intermittent fasting, whether it's by design or just by accident, because you feel satiated all the time. The theory behind it is it's just too much of an insulin spike when you do eat. It's not just too much of an insulin spike, but your insulin stays up too long. And eating multiple small meals helps get rid of those insulin spikes and gives you little insulin bumps. That way your blood sugar never spikes up at any point through the day, because even on a carnivore diet, your blood sugar will spike if you sit down and eat a pound or two of food. Thanks a lot and take care.